The war began, as most do, with arrogance. For centuries, the Galactic Concord believed itself invincible, a coalition of 9 ancient species, each older than Earth's recorded history. They controlled every trade lane, every star route, and every known military technology. When humanity finally reached the stars, the Concord barely noticed. We were primitive, they said, violent, divided, emotional. They will burn themselves out, one diplomat sneered. As all children do. For a time it seemed they were right. Humanity's colonies were small, our fleets thin, our reach limited. Yet beneath that fragile exterior, the species that had endured ice ages, world wars, and extinction-level arrogance was preparing. Humanity learned. Quietly, quickly, relentlessly. Then came the Thal'Ruun Conflict, a border skirmish that was supposed to be a warning. The Concord sent a single battle group to make an example of a human colony named Erebus 9, home to 80,000 settlers mining rare hypercrystals. They expected surrender. They got silence. When the fleet entered orbit, they found the colony burned. No survivors. No transmissions. The Concord declared humanity guilty of instability and galactic endangerment. What they didn't know was that Erebus 9 had been evacuated. What they didn't know was that we had been watching them too. 1. The mistake. The Concord's first full-scale invasion targeted Mars, humanity's symbol of survival. They sent 5 fleets, nearly 1,000 warships, and a demand for unconditional surrender. The United Terran Defense (UTD) had barely 200 ships, half of them refitted freighters and retrofitted mining cruisers. On paper it was suicide. But humanity had something the Concord did not. Admiral Elias Rhane. Rhane had studied every war humanity had ever fought, from Thermopylae to the Pacific Wars to the orbital siege of Luna. He understood something the Concord didn't. Wars aren't won by numbers or even technology. They're won by resolve. When the Concord's transmission arrived, a condescending ultimatum projected across the system, Rhane simply smiled. "Transmit this back," he told his comms officer. "Tell them Mars doesn't surrender. Mars fights." The message, short and defiant, spread across the galaxy like wildfire. Billions watched as the Concord unleashed their opening barrage, kinetic strikes that lit Mars' skies with flame. Yet for every crater, for every city reduced to rubble, human resistance grew stronger. Rhane's fleets didn't face the Concord head-on. They vanished, reappeared, struck supply lines, communication buoys, fuel depots. Entire Concord armadas found themselves starving in orbit, unable to track a single human vessel. "What kind of species fights like this?" one alien admiral hissed. "The kind that fights when they've already lost everything," Rhane answered, though the alien never heard him. The war should have ended within a week. It dragged on for 9 months. Act 2, The Siege of Sol. By the time the Concord reached Earth, the stars themselves seemed dimmer. Rhane's fleet had been reduced to 1/3 of its original strength. Civilians were evacuated underground. Orbital stations became defensive fortresses. The Concord expected to crush what remained of humanity in a single decisive strike. Instead, they entered a trap 3 centuries in the making. Rhane had been playing a longer game. Humanity's weakness, our need to adapt, had become our greatest weapon. Old space stations once built for mining were reconfigured into orbital railguns. Civilian ships became decoys loaded with fusion cores. Mars' debris field hid stealth drones programmed to ambush jump coordinates. Every piece of the Sol system, from Mercury's orbit to the Oort cloud, became a weapon. The battle lasted 72 hours. Concord admirals called it the human storm. From the surface of Earth, people watched the night sky burn. Hundreds of ships died in silence, their wreckage falling like shooting stars. Every loss bled humanity further, but it also sharpened something primal. Every mother who saw the fire overhead whispered the same thing to her child. They will not break us. At hour 49, Admiral Rhane made his last transmission from the bridge of the TDS Arkangel, surrounded by 6 enemy dreadnoughts. "This is Admiral Rhane." His voice echoed across all frequencies. "You wanted to know humanity's true strength. Watch." Then the Arkangel rammed the lead dreadnought, igniting its antimatter core. The resulting explosion tore open a rift visible from Luna's surface. When the light faded, all 7 ships were gone. Rhane's death turned the tide of the war, not because of what he destroyed, but because of what he proved. That humanity's strength wasn't in its ships, or its weapons, or even its victories. It was in the refusal to stop fighting, even when there was no chance of survival. Act 3. The Awakening. Months passed. The Concord occupied half of Sol, but the humans they captured didn't surrender. They sabotaged, resisted, died screaming defiance. Every work camp became a rebellion. Every execution broadcast became propaganda for the human cause. The galaxy began to whisper. The Shulnir traders refused to deliver supplies to the front lines. The Ketheri artisans created statues of Rhane, carved from crystal, labeling him the Unbroken. Entire species, slaves of the Concord for generations, began to question their masters. "Why do the humans fight?" they asked. "Because they can," someone always answered. "Because they must." On a forgotten moon in the Perseus Rim, a small human resistance group intercepted a Concord distress signal. It came from Erebus 9, the colony that had started it all. The Concord had found the abandoned site and was attempting to use it as a supply depot. The resistance saw an opportunity. Commander Alina Rhane, Elias's daughter, led the strike force. Her fleet consisted of 12 ships, each crewed by survivors from lost colonies. They weren't soldiers. They were miners, farmers, engineers, mothers, and children. But they carried Rhane's spirit, and they carried his words. "We don't fight to win," Alina said as they entered orbit. "We fight to show them that we will always stand back up." The battle for Erebus 9 was brief, brutal, and glorious. The Concord never expected a human fleet that small to attack head-on. They were wrong. The humans targeted reactors, fuel lines, and carrier bays, detonating every depot they could find. The entire depot went critical within minutes. From a distance, the explosion resembled a supernova, bright enough to be seen from 5 systems away. And with that light, the galaxy finally understood. Humanity's strength wasn't in domination. It wasn't in conquest. It was in defiance, in the fire that refused to die. Act 4. The Reckoning. When word of Erebus reached the Concord Senate, panic erupted. They had underestimated humanity. Worse, they had inspired others. One by one, the subjugated worlds began to rise. The Varn tribes raided Concord fuel lines. The insectoid Dras refused to serve as mercenaries. Even the cold-blooded Thar, who had never known rebellion, began to whisper Rhane's name as a prayer. In desperation, the Concord assembled a super fleet, the largest in recorded history. Its purpose was singular: end humanity, erase Earth from the stars. Every remaining ship, every dreadnought, every weapon pointed towards Sol. When the fleet emerged from warp, they found nothing. No defense platforms. No human ships. No transmissions. Just a message. Floating in orbit was a single beacon, broadcasting in every known language. "You wanted to see our strength. You thought it was in our armies, in our weapons, in our blood. But strength is not what survives the war. Strength is what rebuilds afterward. We are not gone. We are everywhere. Humanity endures. Moments later, hundreds of human ships decloaked, not to attack but to leave. They jumped to deep space, scattering across the stars into every system, every shadow, every world. The Concord had fought to destroy humanity. Instead, they had spread it. Within a century, no corner of the galaxy would be free of human presence. Refugees, settlers, soldiers, teachers, explorers. Humanity became a seed that could not be burned. Act V, the legacy. 1,000 years later, the Concord was gone. Fractured, humbled, forgotten. But the story of the war remained. Children of alien races learned the name Rhane as a legend, not an enemy. The phrase, to fight like a human, became a compliment, the highest form of courage. In the archives of the New Galactic Union, historians often debated the turning point of that age. Some said it was the Siege of Sol. Others said Erebus, 9. But the truth was simpler. The day the galaxy discovered humanity's true strength was not the day we won a battle. It was the day we refused to die quietly. In the end, when the stars grew cold and empires turned to dust, the story still echoed through the void, whispered in alien tongues, carved into forgotten ruins, carried on signals that no longer had senders. Here stood humanity. They were flawed. They were fragile. They were unbreakable. And somewhere, deep in the silence between galaxies, an old beacon still blinked, its message as bright as ever. We endure.